What a great opening song. You know, you can see what fun our Euphonia choir has. So if there's anybody out there who wants to have fun and sing like that, come join us on Thursdays. So good morning. Welcome to the home of Calgary Unitarians. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your journey of faith or search for meaning, welcome. If you are visiting for the first time or the first time in a long time, know that we are grateful to have you with us. We come together in beloved community to grow in wisdom, welcome and deepen relationships, and to act for a just and sustainable world. We recognize our responsibility to be stewards of this land and acknowledge that we do this with those for whom this is their traditional territory. The people of the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wellesley First Nations of the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta, signed September 22nd, 1877. Mohkinstsis, now known as the City of Calgary, is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. In offering a land acknowledgement, we honor those who have long been the stewards and accept our shared responsibility for being good caretakers. We acknowledge that treaties were entered into as a collaboration between settlers and the Indigenous people, making us all treaty people. My name is Jane Ebbern, and I use the pronouns she, her, and I have the privilege of serving on your board of trustees. This congregation is special to me because of its celebration of freedom of religious thought, a non-dogmatic approach to spirituality, and certainly because of the warmth of its congregation. Please join us after the service today for our annual general meeting. All are welcome, but only members can vote. Just click on our usual after-service coffee hour, and that will take you right to the AGM. And following what I promise will be a very efficient AGM, we will then meet again for coffee. And now over to Deborah.
The chalice lit amongst us is a beacon of hope in a world in crisis, a beacon of possibility made manifest in community, a beacon of warmth through our interconnections, a beacon of light illuminating our shared wisdom, a beacon of connection by our creating this sacred space together. Holding all this, I light our chalice. And I'd like to invite Mary Anna Louise to join me in our opening reading. This is a reading written by Reverend Don Cooley, titled Multiple Intelligence Welcome. The diversity of the human species is astounding. The fact that we can gather together for a common experience is nothing short of a miracle. Today, let us name and celebrate some of those differences.
Let us celebrate those who worship best through music, for whom the Holy speaks through rhythm and harmony, pitch and meter.
Let us celebrate the interpersonal worshiper who finds the sacred in relationship and in community.
Let us celebrate those who worship best through the visual world, for whom the divine speaks through the aesthetics of a space.
Let us celebrate the verbal and linguistic worshiper for whom words and language, stories and poetry are sacred sources of joy and revelation.
Let us celebrate those to whom the divine might be found in logical reasoning, in mathematics, and through critical thinking.
Let us celebrate the intrapersonal worshiper who's experienced the holy as they listen to the still, small voice within themselves.
Let us celebrate those who worship best through their bodies, those to whom the divine speaks through movement and physical action. And let us celebrate the naturalistic worshiper, for whom the sacred is found in plants and animals, mountains and valleys, deserts and forests, oceans and streams.
Today, may we find a way to connect with the ultimate, each according to our own ways of understanding and experiencing the world. May we bring our whole selves to this worship service and celebrate the diversity among us. This morning, my last service with you is an opportunity for some reflection and aspiring, some deliberations on the past 11 years, things accomplished and some learnings. I chose the prelude and opening reading to highlight the intentional inclusion that we have been striving for. We have gone so far as to say we are striving for radical inclusion. Before the pandemic, we were just getting started with a program of inclusion and accessibility. Much has been done, and there will always be more to do. We have made all our bathrooms gender neutral, added pronouns of choice to our name tag, and yet there is more to understand about the importance of using and honoring this choice. The worship arts team and I and all staff consider the multiple intelligence in our midst, as well as neurodiversity and sensitivities. May we continue to have the willingness to learn and to welcome differences, to acknowledge mistakes and seek and offer forgiveness when necessary. May gratitude be ever present as it is for me today, for all of you who are here and all who are assisting with the service. Paul and Jim, the AV masters, with Bob doing the polishing for YouTube. Ev and Todd for the PowerPoint, and Wendy, our coffee host. Thank you, Jane, president of the board, and our worship arts facilitator this morning, Mariana Louise, and of course, our program staff. Sheila, our director of religious education, and music director, Jane Perry. When she first came, we said, let's do a decade together. And we have. So much gratitude. Our opening song is one I introduced to this congregation, and I hope it will be sung on in the future. The Vancouver-based UU composer Joyce Poley, like our Jane Perry, truly welcomes all God's critters to the choir. Please join in singing our opening song.
Open the door, step right inside. Come into this place where love and hope will abide. Reach out your hand, I'll welcome you in. It's so good to be together again. Start out the day wearing a grin. Joyful faces make the people want to come in. Open your arms to show that you care, and our little light will shine everywhere. When you're in pain, trouble, or doubt, let the love come in to help the hurting get out. Open your heart to share how you feel, and we'll build a church of love that is real. Open the door, step right inside. Come into this place where love and hope will abide. Reach out your hand, I'll welcome you in. It's so good to be together again.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sheila McMaster, and my pronouns are she and her. And I'm so excited to be here on Deborah's final service. And some of the things the elementary crew and youth are doing today are exploring the different feelings that come up when saying goodbye and having an opportunity to share their own stories of change. Little frog in my throat from sadness. This week's Children and Youth newsletter has some great resources on how to say goodbye, emotions, and 11 tips on how to help kids with transitions. And I had someone text me this morning and say, you know what? It's good for adults too. And this week's quote from our newsletter is by Nikki Schieferbaum, and it says, "It's hard when you miss people, but know if you miss them, it means you're lucky. It means you had someone special in your life. worth missing. And now I want to share a story by Unitarian Robert Munch. Some of you may be familiar with this story. And it is Love You Forever. Okay. A mother held her new baby very slowly and rocked him back and forth, back and forth. And while she held him, she sang, I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. And the baby grew. And he grew and he grew and he grew until he was 2 years old and ran around the house and pulled all the books off the shelves, and he pulled all the food out of the refrigerator, and he took his mother's watch and flushed it down the toilet. And sometimes his mother would say, this kid is driving me crazy. But at night, when that 2-year-old was quiet, she opened the door to his room and crawled across the floor and looked up over the side of his bed. And if he was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. And that little boy grew. He grew and he grew and he grew and he grew until he was 9 years old. And he never wanted to come in for dinner, and he never wanted to take a bath. And when grandma visited, he always said bad words. And sometimes his mother wanted to sell him to the zoo. But at nighttime, when he was asleep, the mother quietly opened the door to its room and crawled across the floor and looked up over the side of the bed. And if he was really asleep, she picked up that 9-year-old boy and rocked him back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. And that boy grew. And he grew and he grew and he grew and he grew until he was a teenager. And he had strange friends, and he wore strange clothes, and he listened to strange music. And sometimes his mother felt like she was in a zoo. But at nighttime, when that teenager was asleep, the mother opened the door to his room and crawled across the floor and looked up over the side of the bed. And if he was really asleep, she picked up that great big boy and rocked him back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. And that teenager grew. And he grew and he grew and he grew until he was a grown-up man. And he left home and he got a house across town. But sometimes on dark nights, the mother got in her car and she drove across town. And if all the lights in her son's house were out, she opened his bedroom window and crawled across the floor and looked up over the side of the bed. And if that great big man was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. Well, that mother, she got older, and she got older and older and older. And one day she called up her son and said, you'd better come see me because I'm very old and sick. And so her son came to see her. And when he came to the door, she tried to sing the song, and she sang, I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. But she couldn't finish because she was too old and sick. And the son went to his mother and he picked her up and he rocked her back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And he sang the song, I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my mommy you'll be. And when the son came home that night, he stood for a long time at the top of the stairs. And then he went into the room where his very new baby daughter was sleeping. And he picked her up in his arms and very slowly back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while he rocked to her, he sang, "I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." Oh, and that story always makes me cry every single time. It always makes me cry. And I love that story because it's a story of growing up as we have grown up as a congregation with Reverend Deborah. And it's a story of turning of the wheel of time and change. And in the story, there's a new baby. And just like after summer, we're going to have a new interim minister to welcome. And yet it is Reverend Deborah's last service, and I still feel a bit sad. And to Reverend Deborah, I want to say, we will love you forever. We will like you for always. As long as we're living, our hearts will hold you. And now to Mariana Louise for our centering time.
And now I invite you to prepare for our centering time. I will read the opening word or the centering words, and then we'll have a minute of silence. And then Jane will bring us out of the silence with a musical response. Our centering words. Ministry is a quality of relationship between and among human beings that beckons forth hidden possibilities, inviting people into deeper, more constant, more reverent relationship with the world and with one another. It is carrying forward a long heritage of hope and liberation that has dignified and informed the human venture over many centuries. Being present with, to, and for others in their terror and torments, in their grief, misery, and pain, knowing that those feelings are our feelings too. Ministry is celebrating the triumphs of the human spirit, the miracles of birth and of life, the wonders of devotion and sacrifice, witnessing to life-enhancing values, speaking truth to power, standing for human dignity and equity, for compassion and aspiration, believing in life in the presence of death, struggling for human responsibility against principalities and structures that ignore humanness and become instruments of death. Ministry is all these and much, much more than all of them, present in the wordless, the unspoken, the ineffable. It is speaking and living the highest we know, and living with the knowledge that it is never as deep or as wide or as high as we wish. Whenever there is a meeting that summons us to our better selves, whenever our lostness is found, our fragments are united, or our wounds begin healing, or our spirits stiffen and our muscles grow strong for the task, there is ministry.
Thank you for that story, Sheila. One of my favorites as well. And I'm glad I brought tissues because I think I'm going to need them this morning. At the foundation of our faith is the recognition that we are bound together in the interdependent web of life. Giving substance to that awareness, we turn to honor the joys and sorrows that we share, knowing that in so many sacred ways, what touches the life of one of us affects us all. On our beautiful blue-green planet, there are countless causes for concern, situations that touch our hearts and call for our compassion. This morning, we hold in our hearts all those who now live or continue to live in turmoil. All those whose lives are beset by fear of what the future may hold. Those who are displaced, and those who are worried for their own well-being and for the well-being of those they love. We carry with us today many personal concerns as well. We hold in love and care this day all those contending with illness, including the escalating wave of the pandemic, and those healing from pain, be it spiritual, physical, or emotional. We think of those struggling with the hard and heartbreaking stuff of life. Thinking of those we may be carrying in our hearts, let us now lift them up in silence, or post the name or situation in the chat for others to know that we might add comforting and consoling energy. I invite you to do so as I light our candle of concern. We carry so much sorrow and anxiety these days, and yet there is also joy, for such is life. There are causes for celebration and gratitude and milestones of all kinds. There is now, I think, really the feeling of spring in the air, new shoots appearing and buds popping, that haze of green that lets us know spring is here. There are some here today joining us for the first time. It is a joy to welcome you. And we celebrate on this first Sunday in May, the May birthdays. And there are many, half a dozen in this community in the next few days that I'm aware of. Makes me wonder what happens on that Labor Day weekend that has so many births at the beginning of May. We know. May we find ways to celebrate that let us know how loved we are. We celebrate today so many who choose and are able to receive the vaccine. And what other joys do we have to share today? As I light our candle of joy and celebration, let us lift them up now by speaking them aloud or in the silence in your own space, or by posting them in the chat for others to add their good wishes. We light our candle of joy. And we light a third candle, our global candle. And today I light our global candle in recognition of Beltane, or May Day, celebrated yesterday, May 1st. It is celebrated by many earth-based traditions, especially in Ireland, Scotland, and England. Perhaps you've heard of dancing the maypole or the Morris dancers. And just a little sidebar, as I was doing a little bit of research about this, it turns out that the Morris dancers would regularly blackface, and in recognition of anti-racism work, have chosen to go blueface instead. May that continue, that recognition continue. Beltane is the midpoint between the winter and summer solstice. It's a time of fertility and harvest, the time for reaping the wealth from the seeds that have been sown. Appropriate, as today we reflect on some of the seeds sown during our shared ministry together. With this, I light our global candle and invite you, if you have situations in the world that you'd like to lift up, to put them in the chat. Our global candle for Beltane. In some ways, today is rather surreal for me. My last service with you, poignant and bittersweet. And while there are things, many things actually, I wish I'd done differently, the greatest feeling is one of satisfaction, of work well done together. The words I often use in a memorial service have kept coming to mind. I say, it is no easy thing to say goodbye to a loved one. And I have certainly loved this congregation. When I came here 11 years ago, we had great expectations of what we would do together. Some, not all, have come to fruition. I said then that I was committed to at least 10 years. That stability, one of the things the search committee articulated as important. I shared in my application to come here that the metaphor I hold for ministry is being a doula. For those unfamiliar with the term, a doula is one who supports a woman through the process, the whole process of pregnancy, from first finding out right through until after the birth and the transformation that happens there. Primarily, a doula is a supporter of the transformation, as well as an educator, an advocate, and a witness. This has meant that my leadership style, if you will, has been one of encouragement and suggesting rather than follow me. This, I know, has been frustrating for some people, and for me at times as well. For it often takes longer. But it's sort of like when we let our children wash the dishes, knowing full well that we're going to have to probably go and check them afterwards, but the importance of them doing it. There have been so many numerous times when an idea comes forward from a seed I planted sometimes years before as novel, and this from somebody else, and this so delights me. There are a few times when I feel I have really taken the lead, the follow me, more than my natural doula way of doing things. And the two that come most readily to mind are moving to theme-based ministry. I planted seeds for many years for this, and finally I said, we're going to do it now. The other was calling Jane Perry to be our director of music. I knew Jane from Ottawa and knew what a gift she would be for the community. And so I said, we need to do this. And there was some pushback, and now everyone is so grateful for that. Most of the time, though, I have been the doula, supporting this community through transformations, and hope it has led to a sustainable practice of shared ministry. The first few years of my ministry here we were collectively engaged in clarifying our purpose and crafted together the purpose statement that now guides our efforts. We come together in beloved community to grow in wisdom, to welcome and deepen relationships, and act for a just and sustainable world. The last part of that purpose, to act for a just and sustainable world, brings to mind a quote by environmental lawyer and activist Gus Speth, that has been so meaningful for me. And I offer the quote. He says, "I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science, we could address these problems, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation." He said, "We scientists don't know how to do that." This really speaks to my understanding of a faith community, this community, to bring about spiritual and cultural transformation. Some of that will be, I hope, in continuing the work of dismantling racism and reconciliation with First Nations, anti-oppression work at all levels. I do hope this will continue. The next song we will sing, a favorite of mine, as are all of the songs this morning, exemplifies this challenge and call to awareness and response to oppressions. Many, though not all of you may be familiar with this story. The song had an original title of "Standing on the Side of Love." Those who are not fully able to stand and their allies challenged the able-bodied language. Oh, there was resistance. Whether we can stand upright on two legs, we all take a stand for what we believe or for issues of justice. The definition of stand includes more than the physical action of standing. So much pushback. The composer, Jason Shelton, shared about how he was inspired to write it as an anthem for our faith and was so distressed at being considered insensitive or oppressive. And he stayed at the table with those expressing concern, worked through his own stuff to be able to understand, to genuinely look through another's perspective and both empathize and respond. And this is what is being asked of us as we engage more deeply with dismantling racism, with anti-oppression work. We have to address our own stuff, to hear the "yeah, buts" that come up for us, and continue to dig deeper until we can genuinely see the alternative perspective. And more than merely empathize, to respond. This is what Jason modeled in the changing of the name and lyrics of Standing on the Side of Love, to respond to answering the call of love. It's now a call to action. And I'm not 100% sure that all of the lyrics have been changed from Standing on the Side of Love to Answering the Call. But please, as you sing this in your own home, change those words. Jane, let us answer the call of love.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
The story is told of a farmer who grew excellent quality corn. Every year he won awards for the best grown corn. And one year, a newspaper reporter interviewed him and learned something interesting about how he grew it. The reporter discovered that the farmer shared his seed corn with his neighbors. How can you afford to share your best seed corn with your neighbors when they are entering corn in the competition with yours each year? The reporter asked. Why, sir, said the farmer, didn't you know the wind picks up pollen from the ripening corn and swirls it from field to field? If my neighbors grow inferior corn, cross-pollination will steadily degrade the quality of my corn. If I am to grow good corn, I must help my neighbors grow good corn. So it is with our lives. Those who want to live meaningfully and well must help enrich the lives of others. For the value of a life is measured by the lives it touches, and the welfare of each is bound up with the welfare of all. Such a great story. Good seeds require good soil and cross-pollination. As I think about the soil of the seeds that are planted in this congregation, I find myself thinking about the soil. I think about the generosity of this community, that in my 11 years here, I think with the exception of 1, maybe 2 years when there was a small deficit, there have always been surpluses. You'll hear more about this in the meeting to follow. But almost $90,000 of added surplus that is helping us through this unprecedented time when we do face deficits. The soil is rich in this place. Another thing that I have always enjoyed and loved about this community, and this is a new term for me, but experifail. This means that we're willing to try, and if we fail, we try again. And that was one of the things that so impressed me as soon as I came to Calgary, was a willingness to say yes. That rather than the constant litany of we've already tried it and it didn't work, always the okay, let's try again. And such is the stuff of community always. There will be conflicts and challenges, fertilizer, added fertilizer for the rich soil. There have been over 100 new members during my tenure. True, too, is that attrition has kept our actual numbers about the same. And while I have fallen short of my own hope to grow us to 200 strong, as I have been reflecting, I keep going back to the garden metaphor. And while the size of the garden has remained constant, I have seen us practice companion planting. Less and less siloing of one committee having jurisdiction and more of a collaboration and a sharing. I have watched the nimbleness of our board of trustees when there were 5 people who were really committed. And rather than just trying to get people there, they said, let's operate with fewer people. And it's been so effective. We have been companion planting with other organizations and offering our building as a resource. When I came here, I talked about the idea of satellite ministry, of having pockets of Unitarians all over southern Alberta that would see our congregation as their home congregation, but still meet in other places. It was a focus of my first long sabbatical to go and explore this, and this congregation engaged it and invested in the infrastructure to make that happen. Now, while we don't have satellite communities yet, we do have the infrastructure, and that, especially the AV infrastructure, has served us so well as we go forward with, as we have had to do our services virtually. I think this multi-platform way of doing services and engaging people will be something that is sustained and will continue on. I've heard so many stories of people who can come to committees now because they can come and join a committee meeting virtually and not travel for an hour each way to get there. I'm so grateful for that foresightedness that has been present here. Another request that was made when I came here was to have Calgary Unitarians be more well known in the wider community. I've dedicated a fair bit of time to this, and sometimes been challenged that I dedicate too much time to it. I've wrestled with that throughout my 10 years. And I will say that the relationship that we now have with the Calgary Alliance for the Common Good as founding members, and now with representatives from Calgary Unitarians serving in all aspects of that organization, this has brought us into wider recognition in Calgary. The work with the Calgary Interfaith Council and the work that we have done around engaging other faiths has lifted us up as being open to different perspectives. I do so hope that this too will continue. During my tenure, we have been a teaching congregation. We have had 3 interns, and we have done an ordination that had never been done before. So many things that have come to fruition. Always there is more to do. Always things left undone. But I think a strong foundation, a healthy soil for the next ministers that will come to you. I want to close my reflection with part of the words that Mariana Louise used as our centering time. That reading was used at both of my installations, both in Toronto and here, and also at my ordination. It speaks to me of what ministry is, and that it is shared ministry. It is never a minister alone. Ministry is celebrating the triumphs of the human spirit, the miracles of birth and life, the wonders of devotion and sacrifice. Witnessing to life-enhancing values, speaking truth to power, standing for human dignity and equity, for compassion and aspiration. Believing in life in the presence of death, struggling for human responsibility against principalities and structures that ignore humanness and become instruments of death. Ministry is all this and much, much more than all of them, present in the wordless, the unspoken, the ineffable. It is speaking and living the highest we know, and living with the knowledge that it is never as deep or as wide or as high as we wish. I am filled with such gratitude for this community and our time together. And in order to have a further expression of that gratitude, I invite Jane Ebbern for the offering.
I'd like to take a few words from our own Reverend Deborah. Take now a few moments to appreciate our being together, though at this time only virtually. Yet with the recognition that we truly are together, we are not alone. We need community to remind us of our web of connection, to remind us of our capacity and willingness to give and receive. For it is the contributions of each one of us that creates and sustains community. And as we now take our offering, please be as generous as you can be and enjoy Jane Perry's wonderful playing. Thank you. Invite you now to join with us in a ritual of release. Jane Ebbern as president, myself as the person on the Committee of Shared Ministry, and Reverend Deborah. And there will be a part for the congregation. The words will appear on your screen, and they were included, if you're on the phone, they were included with the order of service that was sent out. So I invite you to read aloud as the congregational parts come up. The life of our beloved community is fluid, ever changing, with people coming and going, new visions and new possibilities. 11 years ago, we welcomed you, Reverend Deborah, as our minister here at Calgary Unitarians, and we have all benefited. We have been enriched and have grown as you guided us with enthusiasm, compassion, and openness through difficult times, peaceful times, and times of significant change. Today, we must say farewell to you. Reverend Deborah, we are grateful that you came to practice your ministry among us and guided us into shared ministry. We laughed, we cried, and we grew in wisdom, deepened relationships, and acted for justice. You have blessed us with your leadership. Even though you will no longer be with us, we will cherish the many memories that we have shared
We will all miss you. And we're excited for the new adventure that you are beginning and the new adventure that awaits us. In acknowledgement of this new beginning, for you and for the congregation, we have a ceremony of releasing for us all.
To you, the members and friends of this beloved community, now release Deborah from her role as Minister of Calgary Unitarians.
We do.
Deborah, do you release Calgary Unitarians from turning to you for ministry and guidance?
I do.
Deborah, you are hereby released from your ministry with Calgary Unitarians with gratitude for all that you have given us and a blessing of hope for the future. The circle of our love and the spirit of our community will surround you always, and the congregation will continue the work we have started together.
Deborah, we know that you will be forever a minister, though no longer our minister. We know that you are retiring and that you will always follow your life's calling to ministry in some capacity. May your time in service with Calgary Unitarians add to the gifts you will undoubtedly continue to share with the world. Will everyone please join us in a blessing? May you find joy and happiness in the wondrous possibilities before you. May you be nourished and sustained by the love and gratitude of all who have known you and will come to know you. May you find peace and kindness in every day. Blessed be.
I've known Deborah for 16 years now, 10 years in serving as your music director here at Calgary Unitarians. But originally, when I was music director at the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa, when one Deborah Falk walked in one day as our student minister. It's been a wonderful professional relationship, and I actually can see how this will continue for quite some time, my dear. There are two words that I would say best describe what I have seen of Deborah's work over 3 congregations now, and everything she does. One is gratitude, and the other is joy. And those 2 elements are abundant in plenty in this next hymn that we'll sing together, a favorite of hers and a favorite of this congregation. Let's sing Blue Boat Home.
No, below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the light of the heavens in a beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great wind urging me on, read the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor song. I was born upon the fathom
Much of ministry is a benediction, a speaking well of each other and the world, a speaking well of what we value: love, honesty, forgiveness, trust. A speaking well of efforts, a speaking well of our dreams. This is how we celebrate life, through the speaking well of it, living the benediction, and becoming as a word well spoken. With these words, I extinguish our chalice for the last time, taking the warmth and the inspiration of this community into the safekeeping and sharing of our individual hearts. Let us extinguish the chalice.
As we close our worship time together this morning, I'll remind us that we have our annual general meeting immediately following the service, and that following that, we have our virtual coffee hour. All are welcome to join. To get there, all you have to do is click on the link that has just appeared in the chat area of your Zoom screen. And now let's sing together our final benediction, Spirit of Life.